Chapter 125 has been largely concerned with the nature of the liberated person, the jivanmukta. This is the one who's liberated and gets on with their life. It's quite a tricky topic. We like to know, how can you tell if somebody's liberated or not? Occasionally we hear descriptions of how friendly such a person is and so on. But the conclusion seems to be that you can't really tell the difference. The liberated person just gets on with their life like anybody else. And we've got some exotic examples here. It is said that Lord Shiva plucked off one of the 5 heads of Lord Brahma. The latter was surely capable of growing one more to replace it, but he did not, for he knew, when all this creation is illusory, what shall I do with one more head? Well, there was probably a reason why he had 5 heads in the first place. And as I've said before, justifying behaviour in terms of spiritual understanding is a rather dubious thing to do. You behave in accordance with the mode that you're operating in. So if you're dealing in consensus reality, then you talk in these terms. If you're dealing in scientific reality, then you talk in these terms. But it's not a good idea to mix them up. You have nothing to gain from doing something or refraining from doing something. Whatever happens, let it happen even so. Why should it be otherwise? So the point is really about remaining in equanimity, whatever happens. But this doesn't mean to say that you don't do anything, that you don't right or wrong, or that you don't repair something that's broken. There seems to be a bias to inaction, and we shouldn't give in to that bias at all. That's not what equanimity is about. Lord Shiva has his consort in one half of his body, though he has the power to burn up even the god of love. He has the power to abandon all attachment or affection, but he behaves as if he is attached to his consort. He has nothing to gain by remaining so attached, nor does he gain anything by non-attachment. Let it be as it is. The whole teaching of non-attachment sounds like you've got to become some kind of aloof android type, a Mr. Spock from Star Trek type, but it's not the case. We exist in a network of relationships, and we continue to operate in that network. The distinction is that we're no longer neurotically attached to that network. We're no longer dependent on that network for some kind of deep metaphysical fulfillment. We enjoy it like we enjoy a piece of music. We play the music, and like any good performer, they perform from a still centre. A good actor or a good performer, good musician, has this inner stillness to them. You see it in the great performers, and this is how we can live our life, from this inner stillness, and we become great performers in our life. We let it be. We let everything be as it is. Even so, Lord Vishnu engages himself in various activities and inspires others to engage themselves in such activities too. He dies and he kills others. He is born and he grows, though all the time he is totally free from all this. He could easily refrain from all this, but what is to be gained from such restraint? Let all these be as they are. Such is the attitude of one who is established in the realization of the infinite consciousness. Even so do the sun, the moon and the fire perform their natural functions. Though they are all liberated beings, jivanmukta, the preceptors of the gods passivity and the demons sukra are also jivanmuktas. though they play the roles of the leaders of opposing forces, fighting each other like ignorant men. King Janaka is also a liberated royal sage, yet he engages himself in dreadful wars. I've spoken before about this. Would a liberated person go out there and kill? Well, we have to bear in mind that traditional societies were very rigid. They were seen as reflections of heavenly structure, of the heavenly hierarchy, whether it was in ancient India, China, or even in the West. Everybody had their place, and that was it. So, naturally, if you're liberated, you just got on with that. Nowadays, it's a bit more tricky. What do you do with your life? We have choices. It's not as straightforward as it was in the times of the Yoga Vasistha, especially if you're living in the West, where you have a huge amount of individual freedom. What should you then do with your life? It's not so straightforward. We now have the luxury of operating in accordance with our conscience. And perhaps I'll go into that in more detail another time. There were also several royal sages who engaged themselves in royal duties while inwardly remaining free from bondage. While discharging his worldly duties, the enlightened person behaves in the same way as the ignorant person, because you're operating in the realm of ignorance. The distinction between bondage and liberation lies in the state of one's consciousness, which is conditioned in bondage and unconditioned in liberation. Even several demons had attained liberation, like Bali, Prahlada, Namuchi, Vritra, Andaka, Mura, etc. The enlightened consciousness is unaffected by the rising and setting of likes and dislikes, mental action and supramental consciousness. So we're unaffected by higher states of consciousness even. When one is firmly established in the infinite and unconditioned consciousness, even these distinctions vanish. The diversity which people experience in this creation is but an appearance, like the colours of the rainbow. The world appears to be in relation to the infinite consciousness, just as distance appears to be in relation to space. So we mark out space in terms of distance, and in the same way we map out the infinite consciousness as the world appearance.